The sea has many moods. On some days, it glitters like polished glass, reflecting the sun's gold as far as the eye can see. On others, it churns and growls like a restless beast, swallowing anything foolish enough to challenge its depths. But in a certain stretch of the Atlantic Ocean, between the points of Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, the sea seems to keep secrets that defy reason. It's here, in what sailors and pilots would one day call the Bermuda Triangle, that legends of vanishing ships and disappearing planes were born. And perhaps the most famous of them all began on a clear, deceptively calm afternoon in December 1945, when 5 U.S. Navy bombers, known together as Flight 19, lifted into the sky and never returned. It was December 5th, just months after World War II had ended. For most Americans, the war was becoming a memory, and the nation was catching its breath after years of fear and sacrifice. In Florida, at the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, the morning was crisp, the air still touched with winter's coolness. The 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers stood lined up on the tarmac, their wings broad and gleaming in the sun. The men who would fly them were not strangers to the sky. They were trained pilots, veterans in some cases, and this flight, a routine navigation training mission, should have been little more than an exercise in precision, like a well-rehearsed dance. Leading the squadron was Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, an experienced aviator who had flown combat missions in the Pacific. With him were 13 other men, spread among the 5 planes. Their mission was straightforward: take off from Fort Lauderdale, fly east toward the Bahamas, turn north, then southwest, completing a triangular route before returning home. The distance wasn't far, the weather was fair, and the fuel was sufficient for the journey. Everything pointed to an easy afternoon in the skies. At 2:10 p.m., the roar of engines shattered the stillness. The 5 Avengers lifted gracefully into the blue, their shadows racing across the turquoise waters below. The first leg of the flight went as planned. They reached their initial checkpoint, dropped practice bombs on the training area, and turned north for the second leg. But somewhere along that path, somewhere over the endless quilt of sea and sky, something shifted. Shortly after 3:30 p.m., radio operators at the station picked up a transmission from Flight 19. The voice was tight, uncertain. It was Taylor. "Both my compasses are out," he said. "I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, but I'm over land and it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down." His words puzzled the operators. The Florida Keys? That would mean he had flown far off course. But the weather was clear, visibility good. How could an experienced pilot lose his bearings so completely in daylight? Minutes stretched into an hour as the radio chatter grew more anxious. Pilots reported conflicting readings, unsure of their position. The sun, which should have been their ally, was dipping lower, casting long shadows over the ocean. It was now around 4 p.m., and their fuel reserves were shrinking. "We can't tell where we are," one pilot said. "Everything is wrong." The control tower urged them to fly west, the surest way to reach land. But Taylor, convinced they were already west of Florida over the Gulf of Mexico, ordered his men to keep heading east. If his assumption was wrong, that course would lead them farther out to the Atlantic, deeper into open water. Static hissed and popped across the airwaves, as if the very air between the voices was fracturing. "When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, Taylor instructed, "we all go down together." By 6:20 p.m., darkness had swallowed the horizon. The final messages were fragmented, nearly drowned by interference. "We're running low on fuel. Can't hold altitude. We may have to ditch." And then, silence. Not a single aircraft was seen again. The Navy wasted no time. That very night, a massive search operation began. Planes scoured the dark waters. Ships fanned out across the projected route. One of the search planes, a PBM Mariner, took off from Banana River to aid in the hunt. Less than an hour into its mission, it too vanished, disappearing from radar with no distress call. Witnesses on a ship nearby reported seeing a brilliant flash on the horizon, followed by a cloud of black smoke. They searched the area but found nothing. No debris, no oil slick, no trace of the crew. In the span of hours, 6 aircraft and 27 men had gone missing. Days of searching yielded nothing but an empty ocean. No floating wreckage, no bodies, nothing that could explain how a squadron of heavy steel aircraft could simply dissolve into the Atlantic. It was as if the sea had swallowed them whole. As the years passed, the disappearance of Flight 19 became the cornerstone of the Bermuda Triangle legend. This stretch of ocean, calm on the surface, yet host to countless tales of lost vessels, took on an almost supernatural reputation. People began to whisper about magnetic anomalies, sudden storms, even dimensional portals that could whisk a plane or ship into another realm. The official Navy report at the time was conflicted. Initially, it suggested Taylor had become disoriented and led the flight east into the Atlantic until they ran out of fuel and ditched. But later, the conclusion was changed to "cause unknown," a phrase that only deepened the intrigue. After all, why had his compasses failed? How could an entire squadron vanish without leaving a single fragment? And what about the Mariner search plane, disappearing the same day under mysterious circumstances? Some theorists insist the answer lies in human error and nature's cruelty. They point out that the TBM Avengers had limited navigation instruments, relying heavily on magnetic compasses, which can be prone to interference. The Bermuda Triangle region is known for magnetic variation, areas where true north and magnetic north differ enough to confuse an uncorrected course. Add in fatigue, misjudgment, and the vast sameness of the sea, and you have the ingredients for a tragedy. Others lean toward a more sinister explanation, that the triangle itself is a hotspot of unexplained phenomena. Over the decades, strange reports have surfaced, compasses spinning wildly, radios cutting out, sudden bursts of fog that appear and vanish like living things. Could there be something beneath those waters? A geological force, or something even stranger that plays havoc with human instruments and perception? And then there's the theory that captures the imagination of anyone drawn to the mysterious: the possibility of a time slip or dimensional rift. Witnesses in other incidents have described sudden changes in sky color, strange cloud tunnels, and moments where time seemed to warp. Could Flight 19 have flown into such a phenomenon, vanishing into somewhere else? There are, of course, more grounded explanations for the Mariner's disappearance. The model was nicknamed the flying gas tank for its tendency to catch fire if fumes leaked. A mid-air explosion could have been accidental, unrelated to the fate of Flight 19. But in the court of public imagination, coincidence rarely stands alone. Over the decades, bits of debris have washed ashore in Florida and the Bahamas, but none have been conclusively tied to Flight 19. The ocean floor in the Triangle is a jagged maze of deep trenches and shifting sands, capable of hiding wreckage forever. In 2015, a research team thought they had located one of the Avengers off the Florida coast, only to find it belonged to a different squadron lost years later. And so, the mystery endures. The Bermuda Triangle still claims a space in our cultural memory, part cautionary tale, part supernatural legend. Flight 19 remains its most haunting story, not just because of the planes that disappeared, but because of the feeling that something about that day refuses to be explained. When I think about it, I imagine the scene in the final moments: 5 planes, their fuel gauges dipping toward empty, the night wind rushing past, the black water below stretching endlessly in every direction. Perhaps the pilots could see each other's wingtips in the gloom, holding formation, waiting for the moment when engines would sputter and die. Did they hope to spot a ship's lights, a scrap of land? Or did some strange awareness settle in, that they were crossing into a place from which there was no way back? And maybe that's why Flight 19 still captures us after all these years. It's not only a story about planes and pilots, it's about the edge of the map, the thin veil between the known and the unknowable. It's a reminder that for all our technology and maps and science, there are still moments when the world looks us in the eye and says, "You don't know everything." Standing on the shore in Fort Lauderdale today, you can look out over the glittering Atlantic and see nothing but beauty. But somewhere out there, in a vast expanse of water that shifts from emerald to midnight blue, the final chapter of Flight 19 lies hidden. Maybe in the silence of the seabed, maybe in a place we can't yet imagine. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's most enduring mysteries. I'd like to know your thoughts. Do you believe Flight 19 fell victim to human error, the cruel hand of nature, or something far stranger? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and your theories are part of what keeps these stories alive. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps keep these mysteries from fading into the deep.